You're listening to episode 2 of the Fearless English podcast. Welcome to the Fearless English podcast, where it's all about helping you confidently communicate with anyone without compromising who you are. Let's get started, Fearless Learner. Hello, Fearless Learner. Today, I want to talk to you about chunking and how it can help you speak and write English effortlessly. Now, before I get started, I wanted to share a little bit of what happened before I started recording this episode. Now, I felt a lot of anxiety, a lot of pressure, and I was talking to my friend Marley, and she said the most important thing. She helped me remember that this is about helping and serving my community. It's not about me. It's not about making everything perfect. And if I can come on here and help you learn something, that is my job done. And that's what I'm going to be doing today. I want to teach you about chunking and how it can help you learn English quickly and help you use English in a natural way. But before I do that, I want to share a story. A long time ago, around, I would say 5 years ago, I was teaching English in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And there was a list of words that I had to teach my students. And each time the students would get full marks when it came to the new vocabulary. They would know the meaning, they would know what part of speech it was, and so on. I would teach single words. Now, when it came to writing stories, writing, speaking, they weren't able to use the language in a natural way, so they would use it in an unnatural way. And I found this to be very disturbing because here I am trying my best, creating games, creating lessons for these students, but the learning wasn't happening. They always sounded unnatural when they spoke. So I started speaking about the problem with my friend Katuna, who is also a teacher. And I asked her, I said, what's going on? I'm teaching these students vocabulary, but at the end of the day, they aren't able to use the words naturally. And the lesson she taught changed how I taught language from that point on. She said, why don't you teach them chunks? And I thought to myself, what are chunks? And so I decided to go and do a little bit of research, and I found out that chunks are groups of words that appear naturally together. For example, in my opinion, or to cut a long story short, or I'm on my way, or I like the way. I found it fascinating that I could teach language this way. And this is when I found out about the lexical approach. And when I started learning about the lexical approach, it helped me understand collocations. Collocations were the best discovery I could ever tell you. They were something that I thought, wow, this just makes complete sense. It will help my students communicate in a natural way. So I became obsessed with collocations. And if you don't know what collocations are, I'm going to make another episode talking about collocations. In the meantime, you can check out my YouTube video. I explain collocations in a video, so go check that out if you don't know about collocations. So then I started teaching my students groups of words instead of single words. And I'll give you an example. In the past, if I was teaching time, I would teach 11 o'clock. When I learned about chunking, I would teach them at 11 o'clock. So by putting this preposition in front of, the time, It enabled the students to be able to use words naturally, to use language naturally. It didn't matter if they were speaking or writing. I already gave them a chunk of the language, which meant there was a higher chance of them speaking naturally. Now, by giving them chunks of language, I started to see a massive improvement in the way they spoke the language. There was no more guessing. A lot of the words they knew how to put it into a sentence because I was teaching it in chunks. So now I'm going to come back to you. I want you to start learning English in chunks. And this can also be done with grammar. If you are someone who is struggling with grammar rules, I urge you to start learning grammar in chunks as well. This means that you analyze the language on your own and you start to notice patterns. If you check a dictionary, it will help you see how the language is used in context. And listening to videos and podcasts like this one, you'll be able to start noticing language being used in context. So I urge you to find the transcript of something you're listening to. A lot of podcasts include transcripts. Highlight the chunks that you see that appear together. You start listening in chunks. Start noticing it more so that you start to see language in patterns rather than single words. Because if you listen for word by word, like if you listen to each word on its own, it actually hinders you from understanding what the person is trying to say. Because sometimes the meaning is in the chunks, just like a collocation. So have a shower. So have and shower are not on their own. They're a group of words that have one meaning. They're not separate. So I did a little bit of research and I thought about like chunking. Why is it so good for you? Why does it help students remember more words? Your brain finds it easier to recall words that are in groups rather than words that are on their own. So it helps your brain remember more, and it also helps your brain remember the vocabulary for a much longer period of time rather than a short period of time when you learn words, single words. A good example of this is when someone is trying to remember a number. You never say each number on its own, you say it in chunks because your brain is able to recall the chunks of information easily rather than single numbers. The same applies to language learning, and that's why I want you to start putting it into practice. I want you to start learning in chunks. Because from my experience, my students are able to speak faster with less hesitation. When they try to speak, they know which words go where. When they write, they don't feel like, oh my God, which word goes first, second, and third? Which verb do I use here? They just start to sound a lot more. So there you go. I hope that I've convinced you how important chunks are and that you will start learning language, recording your language, listening to language in chunks rather than single words. This will help you immensely when it comes to your language journey. I hope that you take this advice and you put it into action immediately. Thank you so much for listening. Peace. If you enjoyed today's lesson, then you'll love our speaking club, where we take what we learn in these lessons and put it into action. You'll get to meet other women and practice speaking English every week for an hour. All you have to do is go to www.blackboardenglish.com/cup. I'll say that again, www.blackboardenglish.com/cup. Let's work together to help you become a confident English speaker. See you in class.